ॐ स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः. O Ramakrishna, the establisher of the eternal religion, the embodiment of all religions, and the best of incarnations, we salute thee. In the last class of reading, we were reading at page 391, para 4. Now we shall continue from where we left. There, we had finished half of the paragraph where Sri Ramakrishna was describing Akshay's marriage. Akshay is his brother's son. So regarding his marriage, the author was writing about that. So we had finished half that paragraph. We shall continue from where we left. Akshay fell seriously ill when he was in his father-in-law's house, a few months after his marriage. Rameshwar, on receiving the news of this, had him brought to Kamarpukur, where he was placed under the treatment and brought around. He was then sent to Dakshineshwar. There his looks brightened and his health seemed to be improving, when suddenly he had an attack of fever. Doctors thought it was a simple fever and that he would be rid of it very soon. When he heard that Akshay fell ill in his father-in-law's house shortly after his marriage, the master, we were told by Hriday, had said, "Ridu, the omens are extremely bad. He has been married to a bride of Rakshasa Gana. The lad will die, I see." When the fever did not subside, even after 3 or 4 days, he called Hriday to him and said, "Ridu, doctors have not been able to diagnose the disease. Akshay has a complicated, high and remittent fever. Call a good doctor and administer good treatment to your satisfaction. But the boy, it is certain, will not survive." See how Sri Ramakrishna is sure that he will not survive. Hriday said, when I heard him say so, I took him to task, saying, Don't, uncle, let not such words pass from your lips." He said, "Do I say of my own accord anything? I say things involuntarily under the divine influence. I say what mother asks me to know and to say. Do I wish that Akshay should die?" Hriday was very much alarmed to hear these words of the master. He called in good physicians and tried in various ways to cure Akshay. But the disease went on worsening. Akshay suffered for about a month. When his last moment arrived, the master went to his bedside and said, "Akshay, say Ganga, Narayana, Om Rama." Akshay repeated the mantra once, twice, thrice and passed away. We were told by Hriday that the more he wept at Akshay's death, the more did the master laugh in ecstasy. Hriday wept for Akshay and master was laughing in ecstasy. The reason of that one he later on gives. Although the master laughed that way to see from a high plane of spiritual consciousness the death of his dear nephew Akshay of pleasant looks, it is not as if he did not feel a great shock in his heart. Several times he spoke to us of this event long afterwards and said that although during ecstasy he regarded death as just a change of state. He felt a great void at the death of Akshay when he came down to the normal state of consciousness. He could never again live in the mansion of the proprietors after Akshay's death, as it was there that he had passed away. So, Sri Ramakrishna was in different states. When he was in ecstatic state, he sees everything divine. So, Akshay's death also he saw from a divine perspective. The Atman comes into the body and leaves the body to perhaps assume another better body. So that is what he saw in the death of Akshay. So he went on laughing in ecstasy. When ecstasy was gone, he became an ordinary man. So naturally he is the uncle to Akshay and he had taken care of him just as a child. So all that came to his memory. So he wept and suffered very much of sorrow. Rameshwar, the master's second elder brother, was appointed to worship Radha Govinda at Dakshineshwar after Akshay's death. But he could not always be at Dakshineshwar, as he was in charge of the whole management of the household at Kamarpukur. He used to place some suitable and reliable person in charge of his duty at Dakshineshwar and occasionally go to his village to stay there. Ramchandra Chattopadhyaya and another person named Dinanath, we were told, officiated for him during his absence. The master went with Mathur to Ranaghat. It was during this period that Mathur, accompanied by the master, went to his zamindari estate and to the house of his own guru. He did this then perhaps to relieve the feeling of want produced by Akshay's death in the master's heart. For just as on the one hand, the highly devout Mathur regarded the master as God himself and followed him implicitly in all spiritual matters, so on the other, he looked upon him as but an ignorant child to be protected by him in all worldly matters. Therefore, there the master saw the extremely miserable condition of the men and women that is in the place, the zamindari of Mathur, in a village, and was very much moved. He invited them all and made Mathur give each of them oil sufficient to cool their head, a full meal and a piece of new cloth. Hriday said that this event happened at a place called Kalai Ghat near Ranaghat, when Mathur, accompanied by him and the master, was on a boat trip in the Charni Canal. The master saw Mathur's own house. Hriday told us that Mathur had his own home in the village called Sonabere near Satshira. The villages around it were then included in Mathur's estate, to which he took the master. The home of Mathur's guru was not far from his place. There was a quarrel going on at the home among the members of the family, of the proprietors, over the division of their property. They asked Mathur to intercede as a mediator. The village was called Talamargo. On their way, Mathur made the master and Hriday ride on his elephant, and himself went in a palanquin. See the respect his Mathur is paying to Sri Ramakrishna. His own elephant he left for his divine guru, and he went in a palanquin. Pleased with the loving service of the sons of Mathur's preceptor, the master spent a few weeks there, before he returned to Dakshineshwar. Shortly after he visited the houses of Mathur and his Guru and returned to Dakshineshwar, there happened a remarkable event connected with the master at Hulutola in Calcutta. A Hari Sabha, a meeting where Hari's name was sung, used to be in session in the house of Kalinath Datta, otherwise known as Kalinath Dhar. Being invited by the Sabha, the master went there and in ecstasy sat on the seat reserved in the name and in honor of Sri Gauranga, the great Lord. You see, in such Harisabhas, where the name of Chaitanya is sung, so they assume that Chaitanya is always there, his presence is there. Therefore, they keep a seat for Chaitanya to sit. So that seat cannot be occupied anyone else. Chaitanya in his own divine form, though unseen by others, he is supposed to be sitting on that seat. Sri Ramakrishna in his ecstasy, he goes and sits on that seat of Chaitanya. We have given the reader a detailed description of the incident elsewhere. Not long afterwards, the master had a desire to visit Navadvip. There in that visit, because he occupied the Chaitanya seat, it was reported to the highest pontiff there, the Vaishnava pontiff, Bhagavad Das. Then he took it not in a good light. He was very angry with Sri Ramakrishna. How could he sit on Gauranga's seat? But when actually Sri Ramakrishna goes and meets him, he is pacified. He thinks that he has done the right thing. Not long afterwards, the master had desired to visit Navadvip, and Mathur took him to Kalna, Navadvip and some other places. We have told the reader elsewhere how we met the perfected devotee Bhagavan Das at Kalna and what a wonderful vision he had at Navadvip. It was perhaps in 1870 that he went to visit those holy places. He did not feel so deeply inspired while in Navadvip as when passing by the silted up shoals in the bed of the Ganga near that place. Asked by Mathur and others the reason for it, the master said that the old Navadvip containing the spots of Chaitanya's divine sport had submerged in the river. They had been situated where the shoals now stood. That was why he had deep ecstasy when he passed by them. In the river itself there will be sand beds rising higher, just sand hills. So it was in those places that Chaitanya had enacted many of his important sports. But that has gone under the river though. At that time it is part of the main land. Now it has gone under the river Ganga. It will not be out of place here to mention on Hriday's authority an event illustrative of Mathur's selfless devotion, attained as the result of the wholehearted service he had rendered to the Master continuously for 40 long years. Once the Mathur Babu became bedridden on account of a boil in a joint of his body. Having come to know of Mathur's eagerness to see the Master at that time, Hriday told the Master of it. But the Master said, "What is the use of my going? Can I cure his boil?" When Mathur found that the Master did not come, he sent messenger after messenger and informed him of his eager desire. After his supplication, the Master had to yield. Mathur's happiness knew no bounds when the Master came to him. He got up with great difficulty and sat reclining against a bolster and said, "Father, give me a little dust of your feet." The master said, of what avail will it be to you to take the dust of my feet? Will it cure your boil? Mathur said, Father, am I so mean? Do I want the dust of your feet to cure my boil? Doctors enough are there for that purpose. I want the dust of your feet in order to cross the sea of the world. What a wonderful statement. As soon as Mathur said this, the master went into ecstasy. Mathur placed his head on his feet and regarded himself as blessed. Tears of bliss streamed out from both his eyes. Mathur was cured of the disease in a short time on that occasion. The profound relation of the love between the master and Mathur. We were told by the master at Hriday many things about Mathur's devotion to and faith in the master at that time. Mathur had the firm conviction that the master was his only refuge and resort, both here and hereafter. The master's grace for him was also boundless. Although the independent-minded master felt annoyed now and then at some of Mathur's action, he forgot them immediately, granted all his requests, and tried to do what was conducive to his welfare, both in this world and in the next. What a strong and profound loving relation subsisted between master and Mathur is clearly seen in the following anecdote. Once the master said in ecstasy, as long, O Mathur, as you live, I shall be here at Dakshineshwar. Mathur was startled to hear it, for he knew that the mother of the universe herself, in the person of Sri Ramakrishna, was always protecting him and his family. Therefore, when he heard it, Mathur thought that the master would forsake his family after his passing away. After Mathura's passing away, he then said very humbly to the master, what is this, father? My wife and son Dwarka are very much devoted to you. Seeing that Mathur was distressed, the master said, very well, I will be here as long as your wife and Dwarka live. In fact, it actually turned out to be so. The master left Dakshineshwar for good shortly after the death of Jagadamba Dasi and Dwarkanath. Jagadamba Dasi died in 1881. The master was at Dakshineshwar for a little more than 3 years after this event. Why? A little more than 5 years almost. On another occasion, Mathur said to the master, how is this, father? You said your devotees would come, but why are they not coming? See, Sri Ramakrishna had a vision that mother revealed to him, many disciples will come to you. He would climb onto the top of the building, and from there shout, looking at Calcutta, oh my devotees, where are you come? So afterwards, after some time, they started coming one after another. In the meantime, Mathur goes and tells, how is this, father? You said your devotees would come, but why are they not coming? The master replied, I don't know how long from now mother will bring them, but mother herself has revealed it to me. Whatever else she made known to me has proved to be true, one by one. Who knows why this has not? So saying, the master was in a depressed mood and thought, was that vision of mine then a delusion? Mathur felt sorry to see him depressed and thought within himself that it was foolish on his part to have raised the topic. In order to console the childlike master, he then said to him, Father, Let them come or let them not. I am here. I am here, your devotee, always following you obediently. How then can it be said that your vision has not come true? For I am myself a host. I am myself equal to several. So is it as good as several disciples coming to you? That's what he meant. That is why Mother said many devotees would come. The Master said, what you say may be true. Who knows? Mathur did not proceed further on that topic, but raising another, diverted the Master's mind. No wonder that Mathur had such a selfless devotion. We have told the reader in the part entitled as the spiritual teacher how great changes were produced in Mathur's ideas by his keeping the constant company of the Master. Those who render service to a liberated person, say the scriptures, they the recipients of the results of all the good action done by him. So they get, those who render service to a liberated person become recipients of all the good, the merits of the person, the holy person. So is it a wonder that those who serve an incarnation of God should come to be endowed with various divine acquisitions and selfless qualities. The ceaseless flow of time with its waves of adversity and prosperity, happiness and misery, union and separation, life and death, brought the world gradually to the year AD 1871. The relationship of Mathur with the Master, deepening through the years, reached its 15th year. The month of Vaishak passed, Jyeshta came and went, and a half of Ashad disappeared into the abyss of past, when Mathur became bedridden with fever. Rising rapidly, the fever turned into a complicated and remittent type of in a week, and Mathur lost his power of speech. The Master knew beforehand that Mother was going to take her devotee into her affectionate bosom. Mathur's vow of devotion was completed. Therefore, although he used to send Hriday daily to see Mathur, he never went to see him even once. The last day came and Mathur was taken to Kalighat. The Master did not send even Hriday that day, but remained in deep ecstasy in the afternoon for 2 or 3 hours. His body lay at Dakshineshwar while he went in a celestial body along a path of light to Mathur, his devotee, and fulfilled the goal of his life. He personally made Mathur ascend to this sphere attainable by a great accumulation of merit. So Sri Ramakrishna goes and helps Mathur leave his body and his divine body, or if you say subtle body, he helped that subtle body, Mathur in his subtle body, to the great, a good, very good place. So you can call it as a sort of heaven. He made him rise to that high level of that heaven. He also was in his celestial body. His physical body was lying there at Dakshineshwar. When the Master's ecstasy came to an end, it was past 5 in the evening. He called Hriday to him and said, Mathur, go in. Mathur got into a celestial chariot, into which companions of the Divine Mother lifted him affectionately, and his spirit went to the sphere of the Devi. Hriday remained silent on hearing it. When the night was far advanced, the officer of the Kali temple returned and gave Hriday the news that Mathur had passed away at 5 in the evening when Sri Ramakrishna was in Samadhi. So he had left his body and he was with Sri Mathur when he left the body and ascended to the sphere of the Devi. We heard from the Master on a different occasion and have acquainted the reader with it elsewhere, that the highly devout Mathuranath would have to return to this world as his desire for enjoyment remained unfulfilled. Sri Ramakrishna predicts that Hriday Mathur would not get salvation straight away. He would come back to the world again because he had more desires left to be satisfied. Until all the desires are fulfilled and one becomes completely detached, one cannot leave the world and get into the presence of God. So, with his unfulfilled desires, he would again come back to the world, Sri Ramakrishna predicts. And as his desire for enjoyment remained unfulfilled. And it is also, the scriptural statements are there, such people who have got a lot of merit, they, after enjoying the higher heavens for a long period, then they come back to the world again and they are born in a rich and a very cultured family. And they enjoy again whatever desires were left, and after fulfilling those desires, they become desireless. Afterwards, by the grace of God, they attain to infinite bliss of God, never more to come to the earth again. So that is predicted by the scriptures. So Mathur Babu also, because he had served the incarnation, he went to the highest heavens, there enjoyed the heavenly joys. Then Sri Ramakrishna predicts he will come back to the earth again. Shuchiram Srimatam Gehe Yoga Prashto Abhijayate. So when the Yoga Prashta means a person who is on the way to the highest realization, if he does not attain to it, then he is called a Yoga Prashta. Mathur was in a way, because of his tremendous service to the Master, which was more than any yoga, he did not, but all his desires were not fulfilled. He also became a Yoga Prashta and comes back to the earth. How do they come back? The Bhagavad Gita says, Shuchiram Srimatam Gehe is born in a very cultured, Shuchiram Srimatam, rich family. Cultured and rich family, such people are born. There they enjoy the world also and fulfill all their desires. Again they go back to the highest heaven. That's what the Bhagavad Gita says. So thus we come to the 19th chapter. We now enter the chapter 20, where the topic is the worship of Shodashi. Shodashi is one of the forms of Divine Mother. Mathur passed away, but the tenor of life in the Kali temple at Dakshineshwar went on as before. Days and months passed and the year 1872 arrived. Then there happened a special event, the Master's life at that time, the year 1872. We must now go to the house of Master's father-in-law in the village Jairambati if we want to understand the series of events ultimately leading to it. When the Master, the Holy Mother was very young when she saw the Master for the first time after the marriage. When the Master went with Bhairavi Brahmani and Hriday to Kamarpukur, his native village, in 1867, the women relatives as we mentioned above, before, had his wife brought there. That was in reality the first occasion when the Holy Mother met her husband. Anyone who has had the opportunity of comparing the young girls of towns like Calcutta with those of villages like Kamarpukur will have noticed that the bodies and minds of town-bred girls become developed at an earlier stage than those of the villages. In villages, girls of 14 and sometimes 15 or 16 also do not have the physical signs of their youth fully developed. Their minds also, like their bodies, develop late. This is so perhaps because they have not to live in small places, cribbed and cabined, like birds confined in cages, but live their lives in a natural way, breathing pure air and roaming freely about in their villages. Sure, the author himself was a student of medicine. Therefore, he discusses his anatomy and medical part of a person. The Holy Mother, therefore, was very young when, at the age of 14, she met her husband for the first time. Her powers of understanding, the profound ideal and responsibility of married life were just at the point of unfolding themselves. At that time, the pure girl was delighted, experiencing indescribable celestial bliss in having the divine company of the Master, devoid of body consciousness, and enjoying his selfless love and attention. On many occasions, she used to describe that delight of hers to the women devotees of the Master, saying, "My heart remained incessantly so very full of an indescribable bliss that I have always felt since then as if a jar of bliss full to overflowing was installed in my heart." So she says later on to the women devotees, "I felt as if a jar of bliss has been permanently installed." So many adversities came in her external life, but the joy inside was there, unrestricted. So she always felt joy, even physically she was found she was suffering outside. When in a few months the Master returned to Calcutta from Kamarpukur, the girl went to her father's home feeling at heart that she was in possession of an infinite wealth of bliss. The feeling and the delight, we clearly understand, produced a change in all her conduct, speech, movement, work, etc. But it is doubtful whether people in general could notice it, for it made her calm and not fickle, thoughtful and not pert, selfless and not self-seeking, and by removing from her heart the feeling of all kinds of want, made her infinitely sympathetic to the sorrows and miseries of humanity, converting her by degrees into an embodiment of compassion itself. So she became an embodiment of compassion because of the spiritual training. Because of the spiritual training, she was so full of bliss. She did not require any outside thing to make her happy. We are sometimes happy and we are sometimes depressed because we depend upon something external. When we get it according to our wish, we are happy. When it goes against our wish, or when we are deprived of that thing, we feel miserable. So in her case, there wasn't want at all. All her wants have been satisfied because she has got infinite joy, as if it has been installed in a picture inside her heart. So always she is feeling joyful. She doesn't require anything at all from outside to make her joyful. So how can she be unhappy? So she was always full of joy. And people who are always enjoying joy, they are always very sympathetic to others. They always immediately sympathize. Oh, poor people, I am in such a great joy and he is enjoying. They sympathize. So, infinitely sympathetic to the sorrows and miseries of humanity. So like that she became a person of great compassion. On account of the influence of this joy, of even endless physical suffering now appeared to her to be of no consequence. And she felt no pain at all if her care and affection for others were not returned. She did not expect anything from others. Thus, content with the barest physical necessities and lost in herself, the girl lived then in her father's house only physically, her mind dwelling far away at Dakshineshwar at the feet of the Master. So her whole mind was with the Master, her husband. So her only body seemed to be in Gairavati. Although a strong desire arose now and then in her mind to go to him and see him, the girl controlled it and was patient, thinking all the while that he who graciously loved her so much at her first meeting with them would never forget her and would surely call her to him at the proper time. Thus passed days one after another, and the girl, from her firm in her faith, awaited that auspicious day when the call would come from her husband to go to Dakshineshwar. 4 long years passed one after another, but the strong current of hope and longing kept on flowing uniformly in the girl's mind. Her body, however, did not continue in the same state as her mind, but changing daily, it made her a young woman of 18 in 1872. Although the bliss due to her first meeting with her godlike husband kept her high above daily pain and pleasure, is there the possibility of pure, unadulterated bliss in this world? In their gossip, the menfolk of the village made cutting remarks that her husband was mad, that he cast away even his wearing apparel and roamed about naked, repeating Hari, Hari, etc. And the women of her age alluded to her as a madman's wife and looked upon her as an object of pity or contempt. She was much pained at heart by all this. Men folk are also looking at her with contempt, and the women folk also are doing the same. So she was very much pained, but said nothing. Absorbed in the thought of the Master, she sometimes yielded to doubts. Is he then not the same person as I knew, as I saw before? Has such a change as people say really come on him? If by the decree of Providence it has actually happened, I must no longer be here. I must be by his side and serve him. See the tremendous resolve. Any other person would have hesitated to go to a person who has become mad, who runs about naked and who is not normal. So both men and women, both of them speak like that. Under that condition, let me go and then serve him. A girl of, a woman of 18, what tremendous selflessness and spirit of service should be there in her. So she thought, if it is true I should not stay in Jaramati. I must be by his side to serve him. So she was resolving in that way. She reflected a great deal and came to the conclusion that she should personally go to the Dakshineshwar and have all her doubts cleared in the light of facts and do what she ought to. So she decided, I must go myself and see what is happening to my husband. The opportunity to carry out her resolve. Sri Chaitanya was born on the full moon day of the month of Falgun, the day of Dol Yatra, a day of festivity in which Sri Krishna is swung in a swing. Many people from farthest end of Bengal came every year to Calcutta to bathe on that occasion in the holy waters of Ganga. A few women distantly related to Holy Mother had decided that they should go there on that occasion that year to take a bath in Ganges. She went to them and expressed her desire to go for a bath in the Ganga. So she had also the desire to meet her husband also. And she could not tell that directly to the ladies. So she said, you are also going for Ganga bath in Ganga. I also want to come with you and have a bath in Ganga. Thinking that it was not reasonable to take her with them without her father's permission, the ladies asked their father, Ramchandra Mukhopadhyay, about it. That your daughter wants to come with us. Do you agree? As soon as the intelligent father heard it, he understood why his daughter wanted to go to Calcutta. So he guessed the main purpose of his daughter was to meet her husband and know the facts about his going mad or not mad, etc. for herself. So, therefore, he made all arrangements to take her himself there. He said, I will also go with her to Calcutta. So that was how it was decided she would go to Calcutta and then meet her husband. So the time, auspicious time was nearing, and she would have a bath in Ganga, and we will see that Ganga is not only one bath. For almost 14 years she is going to have Ganga bath continuously. So Ganga becomes her companion, and so her life takes a new turn, what we call to turn her ordinary name from Sharda Devi into Sharda Devi, the Holy Mother. So all that will come in our next reading. So today we shall stop here itself. Niranjanam nityamanantarupam bhaktanukampa dhrita vigraham vai Ishavataram paramesha vidyam tam Ramakrishnam shirasa namama. O Ramakrishna, the taintless one, the eternal one, the one with infinite forms, the one who has assumed a human form for the sake of the devotees, the one who is the incarnation of the Supreme Soul and the adorable Lord of everything. We salute you, bowing our heads. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.